Thank you very much, Chairman Pallone, and thank you so much, Chairwoman Schakowsky, for having this important hearing. And I also want to thank all of my colleagues for your amazing questions that are going to come forth so that we can deliberate as legislatures do, so we can set the record straight and create laws that, in this case, protect the American consumer. And I think it's important that the Federal Trade Commission's FTC authority be returned so that they can help return money to defrauded individuals across this country. In many of our districts, we have seen our constituents inundated with COVID-19 scammers attempting to prey on their fears and financial insecurities. If the scams were successful, the FTC would have been able to step in, use its 13B authority to stop these bad actors and put money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. Since July of 2018, almost 1 million people in my state of California have received nearly $172 million in redress under 13B. For 40 years, the courts uniformly held that the FTC could obtain equitable monetary relief under Section 13B. Last Thursday, the Supreme Court held it could not. It is hard to imagine a more pressing issue for Congress to fix than the leading federal consumer protection agency losing its most effective weapon to help people during an unprecedented public health crisis. The Consumer Protection and Recovery Act seeks to reaffirm this authority so the agency can continue to make consumers whole again. And with that, I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and once again, and also Ranking Member Bilirakis for having this important hearing. And this is an opportunity for the American people to understand the balance of power and authority in this country with the three branches of government. And here we have a law that was interpreted by the courts. And now we have back to the legislature where we make laws. And therefore, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to exercise our responsibility as the legislative branch. And also, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, I think there was a little bit of noise going on or misinterpretation about the next witness panel, Mr. Beals, which he's going to have a great opportunity to answer any questions. I didn't want any of our viewers to think that he was thwarted or can't answer any questions. It will happen in the next panel. So with that, I have a question for our panelists, the acting chairwoman of the FTC. The consumers who are harmed deserve fast, meaningful redress, and that means at the very least getting their money back. It simply cannot be profitable to defraud consumers until the FTC notices it. Right now, the message to wrongdoers is that they're free to pocket the money they've stolen from consumers ever since last week. Meaningful consumer recovery cannot be theoretical. It needs to be firmly established in the law. I have also heard some in the business community express due process concerns if the FTC has the authority to obtain monetary relief for consumers under Section 13B. I personally have had some meetings with some of these individuals who have those concerns. No one wants to prevent people from defending themselves, especially when asset freezes or other court orders really can devastate legitimate small businesses. As a former small business owner myself, I appreciate this concern fully. So in addition to the fact that all the proceedings under Section 13B under this legislation happen in federal court before a neutral federal judge, can you speak to the checks and balances in the FTC enforcement process that ensures due process for the accused? Acting Chair Slaughter.
Thank you so much for that question, because I agree with you that due process is enormously important. If we take our law enforcement authority very seriously and we want to execute it fairly. And so we have a number of procedures in place within the FTC to make sure that that is the case. So investigations happen. Companies are given an opportunity to respond, to engage with the staff. Before any complaint is filed, companies have an opportunity to meet with the bureau director, and if they want, with the commission. And for each commissioner to hear out the arguments that the company makes. And then the commission itself has to vote, and the vote has to carry with a majority on any particular enforcement action and on any settlement. So whether we're going to court and asking for money or we're agreeing with the defendant to settle for money, that has to be subject to a commission vote, and that is a really important protection.
Thank you. I've heard some argue that the FTC will be just fine without Section 13B authority and this bill because the Commission can simply use Section 19 of the FTC Act to seek consumer redress. I just want to go through, especially for our consumer viewers, go a little bit through a question and answer with you, if you don't mind. I'd like to explore the mechanics of Section 19 with you. How long does it take for an administrative order to be entered under Section 19?
A fully litigated administrative order could take years, 3 to 5, let's say.
Okay. And under 13B process, it is less lengthy?
Under 13B, we'd go directly to federal court. So we wouldn't have to do the administrative process and then a federal court proceeding to get money. We'd go right to federal court to seek the money.
So in layperson's terms, when you say to seek the money, basically the court is the one that gives you the thumbs up or thumbs down to continue to proceed in that action, correct?
Yes, and that's another really important due process protection. The FTC can't order fines or order restitution unilaterally. We have to seek it from a judge, and the remedies are equitable, which means they have to be fair to both sides.
Okay. Under Section 19, well, I'm almost out of time, and I just wanted to thank you, Acting Chairwoman Slaughter, for testifying today. And I'm sure that we're going to have other opportunities for us to get written information back and forth from the FTC, not just from you, but from other commissioners, et cetera. So I'm very glad that we do have a fair and thorough process before us. With that, my time is up, and I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for carefully and accurately explaining how Republican and Democrat, we agree that the legislature should act, and then where we disagree on many of the details. But I'm glad that we're having this hearing so we can have an opportunity to hear those details, but not just that.
Call on the author of the legislation that in most people's view, it seems, would address the problem of getting money back in people's pockets, of not getting the problem of not getting money back in people's pockets. And that would be the vice chair of this subcommittee, Tony Cardenas.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for carefully and accurately explaining how Republican and Democrat, we agree that the legislature should act, and then where we disagree on many of the details. But I'm glad that we're having this hearing so that we can have an opportunity to hear those details, but not just us, making sure that our constituents, the American people, hear this deliberation, and hopefully will be paying attention and understand how important it is that the FTC be restored its authority under 13B. It's no mystery that Latino, Black, and Asian-owned small businesses have been hit hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. The numbers are real and they're there. In addition to struggling to access pandemic relief, they're also vulnerable to predatory lenders and other scammers that are increasingly targeting small businesses. In other words, a small business may be victimized by bad actors, much like individual consumers. So the FTC's ability to get monetary relief for victims is just as critical for small businesses as it is for individuals as well, especially during the strains of this pandemic. That's why I stress that the Consumer Protection and Recovery Act specifically provide Section 13B, authority for the FTC to recover for small businesses, not just for individuals. So this question I have for Mr. Merman or Ms. Layton, historically, how has Section 13B been used to get money back to small businesses who have been scammed or defrauded?
I can give you certainly one example, the A1 janitorial services case that the FTC decided or brought in recent years. These were small businesses that were being falsely invoiced for services that had never been provided, for supplies that had never been provided. And you are exactly right that in many cases, a small business looks a lot like a consumer. It could indeed be an individual. And I think it's entirely appropriate to make sure that the FTC can effectively recover money for the small businesses as well.
I'll jump in as well. Thank you for the question. Yes, FTC definitely looks out for small businesses as well. And in fact, last week, I believe the same day that the Supreme Court made its decision, they announced a settlement with Yellowstone Capital, a company that provided merchant cash advancers, a kind of financial product for small businesses that was charged. They had enormous problems with predatory practices and cost these small businesses a lot of money. It's a $9.8 million settlement. Still looking to see what happens with that settlement following the Supreme Court case. Certainly hopeful that those small businesses will get their money back, but I don't know that we know that for sure.
Thank you. And I apologize. I'm going to ask you to speculate a little bit, but I think that the question is pretty clear. Who tends on any given day have access to more lawyers? Would you assume it would be the FTC, or it would be a big company like Facebook, for example?
I think it's, I'll judge from my time in the AG's office and my knowledge of the FTC. I think that total number of lawyers available is going to be much larger for industry.
Okay.
It's essentially unlimited.
Thank you. And Ms. Leighton, it's no secret that in many counties across the country, they have statistics on what the average income of a household is. And in some counties, it might be as low as 30,000. In many counties like Los Angeles, it's probably closer to 50, 60,000, et cetera. Now, when it comes to hiring lawyers because you've been defrauded, how many of families like in those categories could honestly afford to hire a lawyer? Is it a high percentage or a very low percentage? Or would many households just kind of throw up their hands with tears in their eyes and possibly say, I just can't do anything about it. I guess I've been defrauded and I have to walk away?
Unfortunately, it's probably a small number. And especially, it's very costly to hire a lawyer. And if they've already lost money, that may be farther than they want to go.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to most seniors, right, Ms. Leighton? Seniors tend to, on average, across America, have less disposable income, right? Correct?
Correct.
And the reason why I think 13B is so critical is because we're talking about protecting Americans across the board. And the most common denominator in America is most American households, most American seniors, most veterans, et cetera, after being defrauded, are really not in a position to go after and protect themselves and get their money back. And that's why the FTC is there. In this great country of America, thank God we have a Federal Trade Commission like the FTC. And 13B is a critical part of making sure that we have an efficient and effective opportunity to protect the American people and to restore some justice in their lives. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield back. If you don't mind, as the lead author of the bill, I just want to thank all of my colleagues for the respectful manner in which we've been debating today and putting out before the people of America our concerns and our agreements and disagreements on how we can move this legislation forward. And I just want to give a special thanks to Class Act Gus Bilirakis. Thank you so much for being so generous with your understanding of our ability to agree and disagree and continue to always want to work together. So thank you, Gus, and Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity to legislate this bill.
Like you said, Tony, yeah, we're all here for the same goal, to protect our constituents. So thank you, sir. And thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
And to all the witnesses, thank you so much.